Joining us right now is CNN safety analyst and former FAA safety inspector David Susi. David, thank you so much for jumping on this morning. Really amazing and terrifying images coming out of this. Some of the video that has been seen shows the plane, erratically circling the airfield before it crashed. And then as it hit the ground, the aircraft bursting into flames. And now we see this video, as rescue workers are trying to make it there almost immediately, we're told. What do you see in this video?
Well, it's obviously a tragic accident here, but there's nothing so far that tells us what caused it. That we do see that not only was the aircraft going up and down, but it's going left and right. There's total loss of control as far as how he tried to land the aircraft. But on the scene, the miraculous survival of 22 people is just amazing that happened. But you can see that the reason that happened is the initial impact site, the aircraft was nose down and caused that initial impact to happen. That's where the engines and everything burst on fire. Now the tail of the aircraft broke loose, and that moved far away from the initial impact site. It continued to travel, and that absorbs the energy that's going on with the aircraft. So that's why there were so many survivors, apparently, from that tail section. That's what they're working with there as far as getting them out and trying to see what happened to the aircraft.
And talk to me more about that, because when you hear, you hear a commercial jet crashing, and then you hear at least 28 people surviving, including 2 children. How? Tell me more about maybe it's more maybe luck than training that led to people being able to survive here, David.
It does have a lot to do with luck. But if we look back at other accidents where there have been survivors, such as the Sioux City accident, Richard could tell us more about that, actually, because Richard was there at the site on that one. But in that case, all of the survivors were in the tail section of the aircraft. The reason that happens is because, as I was mentioning before, the first initial impact is wings forward. And when that happens, the tail of the engine, the tail of the aircraft, most of that energy is absorbed by that initial impact, and the tail of the aircraft breaks loose, and then you can see it's far away from any fire or any other dangers with the aircraft on the impact. So primarily that's how they survive, is after that energy is absorbed by the front part of the aircraft.
There's some preliminary information, and of course, this all can change as the investigation continues, but there's some preliminary information that seems to suggest that the pilot had decided to try to make an emergency landing after it experienced a bird strike. And people remember that a bird strike was, we've heard of many accidents caused by bird strikes, but also famously, a bird strike was what caused the emergency landing that became the Miracle on the Hudson back in 2009. Why are bird strikes so potentially crippling for aircraft?
Well, the engines are most vulnerable to the bird strikes. And when we talk about bird strike, people think of a bird hitting the airplane. That's not what happens. In order to cause that kind of damage, it's a huge flock of birds that the aircraft flies through, and it ingests and it blocks the inflow of air to the engines. When that happens, the energy that's in the engine backfires kind of. It goes backwards through the engine and causes damage to the front of the engine, and therefore the engine cannot ingest it and make the birds go through. It damages itself because the airflow is not there, and the combustion section of that engine is pushing forward and causes damage to the engine, which is not recoverable. Now, occasionally birds, when there's just a few, they can get right through that turbine engine and everything is fine. It goes through, and then they do an inspection after the fact. But when it causes this kind of damages, and again, it's too early to know that this is exactly the cause, but if it is the cause, that's the history of bird strikes and why they cause so much damage.
Yeah, David, thank you very much for jumping on this morning. It's always good to see you. Thanks so much.
Of course. You as well, Kate, and Merry Christmas, considering the circumstances.
You too. Thank you so much.